ready to take the oath, to spread the word of God. I am trusting you to remain loyal to the God. I wouldn't. If you do not, you will have greater powers than me to answer to.
This is a missionary.
You are ready to give a confession?
I am ready to hear one from you.
You are far from your post, Inquisitor. What brings you here? We are in a sanctum holy to Boudica. There are others like it in service to the other gods. I come here often to pray for her counsel, and in this space I may be assured that she hears me. That woman sought only to destroy the foundations of peace and civility that my people sacrificed everything to build. It has many uses, but its purpose is to bring structure to the chaos that surrounds it. They are monuments to Boudica's greatest servants among my people. I hope to join them myself one day, but my work is not yet complete. The Inquisition was based on the need to cut the flesh from a rotting wound. What is a god? A higher power? A rewarder of good deeds and punisher of the wicked? Something men can turn to in their darkest moments when their days seem only like bridges from one tragedy to the next. Our gods are all these things. We are in a sacred place within earshot of the gods themselves. This is not the time. You've been through much these past few months. You will return home and you will rest. When you feel you have recovered, you may rejoin us at the trials. The Inquisition is far from over, and I will have need of you. There are many who continue to spread the lies of the apostate. The Inquisition will not end until we have pronounced judgment on all of them. How did you find it? Another in a string of acts of petty defiance. For all her knowledge, she always preferred spite over reason. Then she should have obeyed. I ask one thing of all my followers. She was incapable. A waste of rare talent and intellect. What of your cohorts, then? They have followed you to their deaths. Is it loyalty that brings them here? Or is it, as my agents suggest, that they have no direction of their own? You worshipped Aethys, did you not?
Your spies are good. What gave me away? The cape?
Yet when your god needed you the most, you chose your country.
We were being invaded, not by anyone who was acting like a god.
Then I should think your hometown gave you a hero's welcome when you returned.
They gave me one. It didn't last, but what does?
Neither faith nor loyalty in your case, I think. Your god deserved better from his follower. You built a weapon that delivered exactly as promised.
I served my goddess as you did yours.
Yet the other builders were slain, 11 of a dozen. Why not you? Were you somehow different? Redeemable in your god's sight?
There was a message there, whether she meant it or not.
Or was it merely that your goddess wanted you dead as well, and your delusions of importance prevented you from seeing the obvious?
A whore's beguiling charms, nothing more. But the spell's broke now, Theos. The trial's over. I know friend from foe, and I've come here now to see a foe repaid.
You were able to destroy a god because another god wished it. Without her hand to guide you, you could not strike at a god any more than you could strike the sky. You are impotent, and not just from the pox. I understand your Duke's bells gave you a mission.
Their orders do not absolve me of my greater responsibility to the safety and well-being of the Republics.
Yet you disobeyed. Something you already have a reputation for. They will know, of course. If it had been for a worthy cause, they might have forgiven you. But I don't see them pursuing animancy after seeing what it's done here. They trusted you, and you disappointed, as you always have. And you will again be disowned.
We do the best we can, but we all fall short eventually. Yet there's still time enough for me to make amends. In any case, I wouldn't be so smug about my fate, Theos. I imagine Woodica responds to disappointment much more severely than even my dukes.
A murderer given life beyond her body, beyond her own selfish purpose. My dear, you embody the very reasons Kith should not play with the tools of the gods.
Last I checked, it was your gods who set us up to destroy each other.
Your city was spared by a god. It was destroyed by Kith, who took matters into their own hands. Such are the excesses my order seeks to correct.
By tearing the souls out of little babies? That's some strong medicine.
Strong and lasting, the way it must be. We do not indulge the whims of bloodlust as you do. All we do is for the sake of a cure. You are here because you are lost. The gods cannot reach everyone, I'm afraid. May you fare better in your next lives. I gather you have had your soul awakened. Why else would you shadow my footsteps like some stray mongrel? You think I have something to offer you, but our business was concluded long ago. I answered your questions once. That your soul is not fit to accept the answers is of little concern to me. I lied to no one. Not to you, not to anyone. The gods are real. They are everything we need them to be, and the world is better for it. The heart of this country has skipped a beat, nothing more. I have done far worse. I plunged the peaceful kingdom of Telosus into civil war. I slew the monarch of Desantio, whose people never knew hardship under his rule, and replaced him with a cruel despot who brought them to ruin. When plague arrived at the great city of Arborensis, I saw to it that the cure did not. They piled their dead outside the city in heaps that rose above their walls. That's where you are mistaken. There was a time, back when your soul was still a shapeless mist, when the world believed only in false gods. Thousands of them. Gods that told them to take slaves. Gods that told them to make war upon their neighbors and devour the slain. Gods that told them to burn their children alive and cover themselves in the ashes as a sign of their faith. But all that changed when they learned of the true gods. Our gods. All those misshapen, bestial instincts melted beneath the radiance of our God's majesty. You could see it in their eyes. That dull emptiness replaced with the glimmer of a kindled spark. And replaced it with one far worse. Have you imagined this existence? The one the apostate would have created. We are not all so virtuous as she. Without our gods, the most wicked, the most tyrannical, they would take that power for themselves. But more than that, it would be a hollow existence. All mysteries forever unanswered. All purposes constructed from meaninglessness. No endings to bring closure. Only a wheel turning without mercy, grinding our spirits to dust. Telling yourself each day that what you do matters, that it isn't all for nothing, that the world is just. The apostate's world is built on believing lies. All I have seen, the millennia of experience. I will not be dissuaded from this course. This is the only way. You have not thought this through. There is no leaving this place for you. I allowed it once. But you have made it all too clear what a mistake my mercy was. With your soul and thousands of others, I will see this world purged of its suffering. Hear me, Boudica. Your servant calls for aid. Roak 10!
Thousands of souls he has tortured. Would that he could live those sufferings 1,000 times himself.
Theos followed his mistress's orders too well. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse that he will remember this again one day after he makes it through the wheel.
He was good at serving his god, I give him that. But he should have picked a better one.
Think he got sick of it all after a couple thousand years? Or did Boudica keep him on the leash?
It is an ending, even if there is little justice in it.
You know something of quiet servitude, Watcher. Groveling and simpering before the gods whose aid you need, so that when they finally raise you to a place of power, you can seize what you desire. You have labored at the pleasure of others. That shriveled hag in Hardwood House. Those well-bred thieves with their lordly pretensions. The wretched tribesmen plagued on their fantasies of grandeur. And then you cowered and knelt before the gods themselves, begging one paltry favor and receiving riddles and visions in response. And now the gods give you orders and commands, even while you set out to fix what they cannot. Yet what have they offered you? The exiled queen is not an ungrateful patron. Finish the work Theos began. Strengthen Boudica with these souls and allow her to become the most powerful of all the gods, with you as her favorite. You say that now, but when you're standing in front of the machine, considering the lifetimes and the powers that await you, we'll see what you do.
At your command, the ancient device became your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. There, in the pale pulsing glow of the machine that set you on this path long ago, you summoned all your strength, focusing on your objective and blocking out all else. With a single concussive blast that rocked the chamber and sent you tumbling to the ground, you freed the souls from their stasis. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed, and sleep welcomed you at long last. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Theos used to enter Sun and Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. You emerged in Ter Evron after days of tunneling through the rubble Theos had left behind, and when you stepped into the daylight, you were faced with a different Deerwood than the one you had left. At your direction, the souls diverted by Theos were guided back to the vessels originally meant for them. For the first time, parents of hollow-born children woke to the cries of their infants and looked into their eyes to see them staring back. People fell to their knees where they stood, thanking Helia or Mogren, or even Aethys for their forgiveness of whatever guilt they felt they bore. But for all the relief that had come to some parents, others only found new grief. For many thousands of Hollowborn had died during Wide-One's legacy, many by their parents' own hands. For those children, there would be no homecoming. Yet the last Hollow birth was in the past now, and those parents willing to risk trying for a new child were frequently rewarded, often with twins. Many felt they saw Helia's hand in it, and the year would be remembered as the year of Helia's splendor. Though you had killed Lord Radric in his throne room, so strong was his drive to rid his land of Eothasians that he returned to life as a death guard, a deathless crusader for his brutal cause. With the remains of his humanity stripped away, Radric came to see all the people of Gilded Vale as worshippers of Aethys, and one day he led his forces into the village personally to see them all purged from his lands. Gilded Vale was left a hollow shell, its buildings ruined, and its people slaughtered. Even travelers and would-be squatters knew better than to take refuge inside its borders. Lord Radric returned to Radric's Hold, where he remained, keeping eternal watch over his barren domain. Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wulfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval. In the ensuing weeks, the streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards. Few dared to step outside their own doors alone or unarmed. But order would soon come from an unexpected source. House Dominel, realizing that stability was good for business, brought the city's criminal elements in line through a systematic campaign of fear and intimidation. Capitalizing on a reputation for brazen fearlessness earned with the murder of a marshal of the Crucible Knights, the Dominels aggressively pressed their authority, murdering all would-be rivals and collecting coin from all transactions in the city, and becoming arguably the most influential house in all of Deerwood. Defiance Bay would not fare so well. Squeezed by the Dominels for every piece of copper, prices soared, and trade ground to a halt. Many commoners found themselves unable to make a living, or forced from their homes to make room for others more favored by House Dominel. Petty crime, prostitution, and vagrancy would reach new heights under their watch, and many would flee the city in droves for the more favorable economy of New Haomar. The destruction of the machine atop Ter Noaneth spelled the end of the reanimated corpses in Heritage Hill. Though at first few were willing to venture into the abandoned district, it was soon cleaned out and rebuilt. The district's horrors still fresh in people's minds, it would be some time before it was fully repopulated, but eventually the lure of cheap prime land would all but erase the memory. The Duke's assassination at the apparent hands of an Animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay, and few Animancers survived the first day. Many Deerwoodans took the end of Wide-One's legacy as a sign, both that the gods did not approve of animancy, and that the purging of animancers in Defiance Bay had been enough to satisfy them. In time, their rage would subside, and a number of surviving animancers remained in and around Defiance Bay, often taking to the wilds to practice their science without repercussions. The town of Deerford had seen the last of the cult of Scan. Dark rumors about the town's many curses quickly faded, and travelers soon returned. Abidon's renewal brought new vigor and purpose to a god long known for quiet, steady labor. Handicraft saw a revival in the Deerwood, and no smith wanted for an apprentice. Additionally, Abidon's restored interest in preservation led to redoubled efforts to survey Engwithan ruins. Animancers and craftsmen alike found much to study, but tensions with Eir Glanfath rose. As for Stalwart, the Battle of Caeron's Scar only strengthened their resolve to unlock the mysteries of Durgan steel and build new marvels with the White Forge. However, Stalwart's ambitions brought them into further conflict with the Raid Serens, as more and more impoverished communities gathered at the border and vowed to finish the work of the Iron Flail. It would be many generations before the region saw peace. The battle against the Eyeless left Stalwart more hostile than ever toward the ogres in its midst, and the villagers grew bolder as they grew more prosperous. After a handful of bloody skirmishes, the Flames That Whisper clan left the Russet Wood to seek a quieter, more isolated home in the White March. While many such places existed in the mountains, the crossing was treacherous, and the ogres often found themselves embattled with other clans whose territory they passed. Less than half of the Flames That Whisper survived the journey, but those that did found a haven far from Kith lands. Releasing Harmka left the Devil of Carrick with a gnawing dissatisfaction that continued to eat at her long after the Watcher confronted Theos. She resumed her search for the men and women who had raised Cold Morn, clinging to the hope that enacting her revenge might one day allow her to feel something. Yet, as she hunted and killed, the futility of her actions grew like a leaden weight in her gut. Her movements grew stiff and sluggish as her zeal deserted her. One day, she found herself surrounded in Maiden Falls. As she tried to fight back against the villagers, she felt her arms stick in their sockets and her legs buckle beneath her. The villagers tore her body apart and shattered its segments while she screamed, feeling none of it. The fortress of Cad Nua emerged as a bastion of security in the midst of an untamed land, becoming the envy of every thane and earl in Deerwood. Legend grew over time of its impregnability, and stories of formidable invaders easily scattered by the keep's defenses became popular around the hearths of Deerwoodinians. Likewise, it also became a beacon to travelers, merchants, and visiting dignitaries alike. Reputed as the finest fortress in all Deerwood, people would journey from near and distant lands alike to experience its fabled hospitality and grandeur. After the death of the Master below, a strange quiet fell over the endless paths of Ad Nua. The attacks on the fortress above ceased, Ad Nua's silent titan the closest remaining thing to a master in its musty, forgotten passages. Pallegina had missed the opportunity to complete her mission from the Duke's Bells. The Deerwood's trade with Eir Glanfath remained weak, but the Valian republics were unable to enter Glenfathan markets. For her repeated insubordination and loss of lucrative trade, Pallegina was cast out of the Brotherhood of Five Sons. She traveled north of the Eastern Reach, where she tried to avoid trouble as a caravan guard, but she could not escape the strange looks and unwanted attention her appearance brought. Adair chose not to return home. Still conflicted as to his role in the Saints' War and unsure of his place in the Deerwood, he took a ship to Adir and reunited with his parents. There, he resumed the quiet lifestyle he had grown accustomed to in his years as a farmhand in Gilded Vale. When the dust settled in sun and shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Theos Ix Arcanon, his former master. He saw where the Grandmaster had gone wrong, and he knew what he would do better. The secret of the gods would be preserved, and with it, the sanity and well-being of all Kith. He donned the remains of Theos' ceremonial garb and prepared himself for the long and lonely task ahead. With the Watcher's goals accomplished and his own vows fulfilled, Kano Rua sailed back toward Rawatai, thinking on the lessons his travels had provided him. By the time he landed at Tekoa, he understood what his path must be. Standing before the Lore College, Kano Rua explained that the tablet he sought had been destroyed, and so a true interpretation of the Tonvi Oratoa could no longer exist. The people of Rawatai would have to create their own. He described the many strange things he had seen in his travels, and announced his intent to pursue the accumulation of knowledge abroad, seeking answers to new questions. True to his word, Kana soon set sail on yet another expedition, and in Tekoa, his passionate accounts inspired many to follow in his footsteps. With Theos defeated and the souls released from Sun and Shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Dyrwood. The grieving mother sought a place where she might do penance for the birthing bell. She returned to Dyrford, where, to the astonishment of the villagers, she delivered the first healthy child in over a decade. She remained there, and with each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Dyrwood, and a measure of grace for her own troubled past. Durrance continued to blame Woodica for the atrocities of the Saints' War. Believing Magrin to have been a pawn in the machinations of the Queen that was, and feeling that Theos' expulsion had been a step towards reconciliation with his goddess, Durrance tried for a time to reopen communication with her. When only silence came, he took it as a condemnation of his continued existence. Ultimately, he built a pyre and threw himself upon it, using his own shattered staff as kindling. In her 4-month journey back to Nositoc, Sagani found that the landscape she traveled had become strangely colorless, the food bland and unsatisfying. She watched the Dyrwood, Glonfoth, the Valian Republics, and the lands beyond slide by with a dull sense of dread. She returned home to great celebration, yet the words of joy and congratulations rang hollow to her. Old beloved songs sounded toneless. The rituals of changing seasons became drudgery, and Sagani experienced her life back in Masuk as if in someone else's skin. So she fought to feel the worth of her actions, or at least to let her village feel them. She led ever longer and more ambitious hunts, mentoring the younger rangers who followed her. On one such expedition, her party was beset by a blizzard, and she pressed on where her companions turned back. She did not return to Masuk. For you, the death of Theos brought an end to your waking visions, and a silence to the whispers of the past. In their absence, you were able to sleep. The questions of a distant lifetime ceased to trouble your soul. All that remained was what to make of the answer. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead.